There's no shortage of noise in crypto, but every now and then a new product hits the market with such motion and velocity, it's hard to ignore. And in 2025, that product was Nillion. They didn't just ship a new product, they shipped a new way of thinking about where data, privacy, and AI is all going in the future. And in doing so, they crafted one of the best go-to-market campaigns for a product we've seen in the last couple of years. So this is video one of our multi-part breakdown of the Nillion go-to-market, starting with the brand foundations or the positioning and narrative of the brand that they use to hit the market hard and capture attention. Hey, it's Ramsey here from Jello, a Web3 marketing and go-to-market studio helping brands and products go from 0 to 1. And in this episode, we're going to be breaking down Nillion's brand positioning and narrative that they use to steamroll the market over 2024 and 2025 as a part of their wider go-to-market strategy for their product. So let's get straight into it. Now, in a crowded market, traction is downstream of trust, and trust can be engineered through positioning. Now, it's important to understand what exactly positioning is, because I think there's a lot of information out there that might throw some people off. Realistically, positioning is the perception that your customers have of you. It's the mental real estate that you take up in their mind, and it's how they view you in relation to competitors. Now, when it comes to perception, this is all about how you define why you matter and how you frame the game to make sure that your product seems like the obvious winner. Now, how we look at it at Jello is kind of breaking down this positioning into three core things. Perception engineering. So what belief are we trying to shape with our brand or with this product? Differentiation. What makes you unconfusable with other products in the market and how we can really differentiate ourselves from those and, create that separation. And three is framing and benchmarking. What lens do we give the market to look at us through and judge us by? It is our responsibility as a company to create those frames and create those benchmarks. Very, very important. And your narrative is how you kind of push that positioning out. It's the storytelling behind how you can even form this position in a tangible way and how you can tell that story to the rest of the market. So let's walk through the full framework and what Nillion plugged in to make it work. So there are three fundamental things that we need to understand before we can go ahead and shape the positioning for our product. The first is the market, the second is the audience, and the third is the product itself. We need to really deeply understand the product that we're talking about. Now, when it comes to the market and setting the context for all of this, Nillion frames current infrastructure as obsolete, as broken for the future of intelligent systems. As they say, there is no internet for intelligence. Now, this becomes a key market wedge and a framing that there is a gap in the market which their product conveniently fills for them. And this sets the stage for a new category of product to emerge, which of course is Nillion itself. Now, the second is the audience. Most of the audience are builders in AI who are maybe building models or using proprietary data, people working at big institutions who have, again, a lot of sensitive data like hospitals or banks or things of that sort. So it's important that these people feel that Nillion is going to be a suitable solution for using their sensitive data to compute over or use in building products. So they feel that there is no leakage from that data. And obviously that's something that people care about a lot. And finally, the product breakdown. Now, Nillion can be quite a complicated product, so I'm going to keep it high level. Essentially, what they're pushing forward is this notion of blind computation, which we'll get back to later, as is kind of how they classify the product itself. But they have also other products like their Nil VM, their PetNet, their Nil DB, and other components that help put this together. Now, in this video, I'm not going to go through all of them and explain them, but I think it's important to understand the comparatives with other privacy-preserving technologies in crypto, such as ZK or MPC. So, for example, comparing to traditional multi-party computation, which can be a little bit slow and expensive, Nillion offers a cheaper and faster alternative. And when compared to ZK, which can be great for verification, but is limited in its ability to do dynamic computation, Nillion also takes the cake here in providing a stack for real-time modular AI computation. So their claim is not that it's just better tech, but again, framing it for a specific subsection, i.e. AI, and that they want to be the new default for AI-based technologies. Now, once you kind of get this fundamental context together, so product, audience, and the context of the market, then you can move forward in developing that brand positioning. And I think the first step is always to look at the brand POV or the brand thesis. Now, this is typically a worldview that the company has or the founder has as to why they're building this product. And part of Nillion's one is that privacy is a growth primitive more so than it is a luxury to have. And we can see this here where we say new primitives equals new internet. Now, like how blockchain turned cryptographic primitives into programmable money, Nillion turns privacy primitives into composable intelligence. Blind modules will unlock a generation of privacy apps. Here, they're not saying that privacy is a want or a luxury. It's a fundamental necessity for the future of an intelligent internet. It's a growth primitive and not an overhead. And they're showing that for us to move forward, we need to move past this surveillance capitalism, where everyone can have control over our data and use it how they please. But instead, with Nillion, you can have that data, compute over it, and not have to worry about people seeing the underlying data, which is very, very powerful. Now, this is a bold, contrarian stance, bringing some critical thinking to the audience and showing them that they've thought about the market very deeply. And again, showing that this is not just a want, it's very much needed for us to expand our capabilities with AI without having to risk our personal data and risk our sensitive data being shown to the end developer. Now, this very much moves swiftly on into our next part, which is what we're calling counter-positioning. Now, when you are positioning your brand or your product, you typically want to choose one of three categories. Either you want to choose the user, you want to choose the concept, or you choose the product. And within that, you want to differentiate differently. So for example, when it comes to the user, either you're differentiating or you're positioning based off an experience you provide them. So are you providing that end user a completely new experience that can't really be replicated anywhere else? Or usually you're focusing very much on a defined segment of the market. So for example, if you look at some of these L2s that have come out in the last couple of years, you have L2s for gaming and finance and consumer products, and all these are trying to differentiate and position themselves as a product for that specific audience. So you have either the audience segment or the audience experience. Now, when it comes to the product, you want to look at the value proposition or the features. And when it comes to the concept, you want to look at kind of the counter positioning on how you want to reframe the value proposition or look at the category of product you're defining. Now, Nillion is actually going for both. They have a new category of product, but also counter-positioning the role of privacy tech that they're building against others that are doing a similar thing in terms of building privacy tech. So what I mean by this is that they are framing existing infra as outdated or extractive or ultimately not the right fit for the purpose that they're going for, unsuitable for AI development and computation over that data. And so Nillion's counter-positioning to the rest of the privacy solutions on the market is that they are the only ones that are suitable for computing over sensitive data for AI products. Now, something fun that they have done is kind of unite people around this common enemy, which I think we have down here. And this common enemy is the data wars, right? So framing the status quo as a war and positioning themselves as a rebel/solution to the surveillance capitalism that we have in the world. And I think this is a really nice way to humanize that experience, because a lot of people might not understand what that means when it comes to a technical perspective, but they might understand that, they get emails from Google saying that they have their emails and passwords in a breach and things like that. And that is something that they can resonate with. So by shifting the mental model and showing this kind of common enemy that's in a familiar framework that they can understand, helps the end investor understand what the real issue at hand is and how it can affect them versus just a technical user who is going to be using the product itself. Now, again, moving forward, we have the idea of category creation. When you are building a new concept, again, you can counter-position yourself against others by showing a new value proposition, or you can look at creating your own category. They're not trying to win an old game that everyone else is playing. They're framing a new one, which is composable intelligence. And as you can see, that's what we have here. Core values are data sovereignty, blind computation, and modular privacy. And so they're trying to make it clear to people that their privacy should not be something that is a luxury, it should be embedded into the system itself. And so the way that they position this, again, with their use of blind computation, with the blind warriors as a movement, and ultimately their focus on a modular composable architecture, shows that they're really positioning themselves away from other privacy solutions and showing what part of the market they want to own. And this really worked. It was a very strong campaign with a lot of strong messaging and a lot of people resonating with this type of framing. And this is what everyone kind of needs to look towards when they're trying to position their brand, is these different gaps in the market that they can try tackle with their product and how they can reposition themselves to separate themselves from other competition. And ultimately, they succeeded in the perception engineering game, framing the current or old internet as unsuitable for the development of AI and even more unsuitable for the growth of humanity as a whole. The blind computation should be a default for everyone. The blind computation is shown as a standard for growth going forward, and builders feel like an early adopter of this new future that they can usher in themselves. Kind of akin to early Ethereum days or Bitcoin days, when we found this new primitive for money or programmable money that allows us to really push society forward. And Nillion has very much accomplished a similar thing. So once you've engineered that perception, if you've positioned your brand, you do need to go ahead and push the narrative. Now at Jello, we like to use the hero framework for building narratives, and we can map how Nillion did that to the same framework. Now in the hero story, there are 5 key components. There's the hero, the villain, the setting, the guide, and the transformation. The hero is always and will always be the user or the end user of this product. The villain is the problems that they face, and this could be external, internal, or philosophical. The setting is the market context, which we defined earlier. The guide is the product, and we have a video on this going over this exact framework, so you can check it out on the channel. And the transformation is how the user transforms or experiences a new life, I guess, once they've used the product, and show them that they've encountered a new reality that is more beneficial for them with using your product. So let's break it down for Nillion. The hero are builders who care about privacy, sovereignty, and building next generation AI applications, who are worried that their data is going to be leaked or don't want people to compute over their existing data and leak that as well. The villain is what we're calling surveillance capitalism, centralized infrastructure, and any sort of worries about leakages of data. Again, this is a core worry that people have. It's a core philosophical problem that people also think about, is that should my data be open for everyone to see? The setting is a broken digital world where data is constantly being compromised. And we all feel that our privacy is being thrown in the trash. No one really has any regard for it. Now enter Nillion as the guide, a call to arms that helps people fight against this broken internet where privacy is non-existent. And the transformation is, in this case, a cultural movement with the Blind Warriors, where these are pioneers of this new privacy native internet. And it's not just a technological movement, but a mass social movement too. But ultimately for developers, it's that they can protect their data and make sure that it's not being leaked out to others. And for those institutions like hospitals or financial institutions with very high sensitivity of their data, they can compute over it without having people look at the data to make sure that, again, we're not being compromised here and compromising our patients or our clients in that regard too. So why does this even matter in the first place? Well, if you're a founder, you might want to listen to this. People don't buy products. They buy worldviews and stories, and they want to feel that they are part of something. It's the emotional trigger is usually what lets people buy something, and the logic is what helps them justify their purchase afterwards. A narrative is not what you just tell the market. Nillion didn't use stories to become louder than the rest, and they did have some very good activations outside of their storytelling, like tuk-tuks in Bangkok and other things like that, but they just framed the problem completely different. There was no other privacy solution that chose a similar framing to them, that chose similar perception engineering to them, in the sense that they were coming forward with cultural movements and new words and frames like blind computation. And it showed them as a trustworthy guide that helped the audience facilitate a better future for their products and for their data. You should be asking yourself, what false belief do I want to break with this brand or product? What makes my solution unconfusable or inevitable to come to market? And am I inviting any sort of cultural layer to this? Because again, these big movements are very hard to stop once you get them going. And continuing with the theme of AI here, in this day and age, content creation is infinite. The amount of noise that can be put onto the market is exponentially growing. But the story, that's the real juice. That's what's really scarce. And a well put together story and a well engineered positioning is going to cut through all that noise extremely easily. So that was part 1 of our Nillion series. In the next episode, we're going to break down how they took this story and this positioning and scaled it across the market, and how they distributed their message through content, community, and other marketing activations that allowed them to not only be seen, but also heard. And if you're building in the space and looking for surefire ways to build your narrative and push your product to market, feel free to get in touch with me and the team at Jello through the links in our description. And as ever, if you enjoyed the video and you find it valuable, feel free to give it a like, a comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one. And don't forget, if you don't engineer the perception, you're going to be forgotten.